Hello, my name is Matthew, and over the weekend I finished reading Jude the Obscure by Thomas Hardy, and this was a buddy read with Alan Morton, and it was great. It's a dark, bleak, pretty tragic novel, and the some points are so tragic it's to the point of comedy, and there's also parts where it's just so dark you'll feel guilty about the parts that you giggled at. In any event, um, the book begins in a semi-fictitious England in the 19th century. The book was published in, I think, 1895. It caused a scandal when, upon publication, there were book burnings and protests. Um, Thomas Hardy never wrote another novel after this. He was so disgusted and offended by the public outcry. He moved on to poetry. But the beginning of the novel, um, there's like a working class town with young Jude. Jude is our main character, and his school teacher, who is moving off to Christminster, which is um, basically Oxford. And when the teacher is leaving, he tells the little boy, Jude, he's a little boy at the time, he tells him to be good and to be kind to animals. And Jude takes all of this to heart. He wants to be a good person. He wants to be kind. He wants to emulate and follow in the footsteps of this teacher that at a young age he idolizes. He wants to educate himself and better himself and move on and one day go to this university town that his teacher is moving to. And he's disciplined. He works hard. He's focused. He teaches himself Latin and Greek, and almost throughout the whole book, he is an ethical, hardworking, good, upstanding person. And everything bad that could possibly happen, every misfortune that could fall on this poor guy, every stroke of luck that could go wrong, every bad coincidence. Um, and there are points where he brings things onto himself, um, but not even from making the wrong choice. So while he's young and he's learning and studying, in town he's generally regarded as a loser. Actually, almost right after he's told to be kind to animals, he's working on a farm and he's throwing the feed out to these crows. And the farmer comes up behind him and basically just like kicks him in the ass and goes, what are you doing? And Jude kind of says, well, you have enough feed for the livestock and for the crows, so we could just feed both of them. And the farmer just fires him. It's like, what is wrong with you? Get out of here. So he keeps his nose in his books. And there's a girl in town. Her name is Arabella. And she takes a shining to Jude. They start spending time together, and they're canoodling and being romantic. Arabella's girlfriends are kind of warning her and saying, why are you wasting your time with him? He's not staying in town. He's moving on. As soon as he can, he's leaving. And Arabella kind of says to herself, I'll keep him here. He'll stay. So a little while after, she's talking to Jude and says, I'm pregnant. And like the good person that he is, there's no wavering, there's no um, embitterment or any sort of questioning like that. Right away, his first reaction is, okay, we'll get married. Um, you know, I made a decision. I have to keep um, my responsibilities and do the right thing. I had my own dreams and aspirations, but that's changed now. So we'll get married. And so they get married. Um, there's a point where now they're living in this like ramshackle house. They're poor, and Arabella, I can't remember what happens, but she has this pig, and on her insistence, she needs Jude to slaughter this pig. This is a man that just recently was feeding the crows. Now he needs to take a knife to a pig's throat, and he blunders it. It's scarring. It's scarring for him. I guess it's scarring for the pig too. Um, doesn't go well. He's traumatized. Um, it's just awful. And almost right after that, he's looking at his wife, Arabella. It's been some time, and he says, "What's going on with the baby? She's not showing." And she basically says, "That was a mistake. I got mixed up. It turns out I was never pregnant." And so that doesn't go over very well. And with the slaughtering of the pig, and there's other things that happened. They have an argument, and now he's off in town, thinking his own thoughts and getting himself just so ruffled up that there was something that happened. But he decides that he's just going to kill himself. So it's winter time, and he goes off to this frozen lake, and he's jumping up and down on the ice. His goal is to crack the ice and break through and drown in the frozen water. But he can't break the ice. And all the jumping up and down, he just exhausts himself until he just has to stop. Then he decides, okay, I'm going to go to the public house. I'm going to go to the pub. And I'm going to get myself drunk. Then I'm going to go home to my wife and show her my drunkenness. And this is what he does. Gets himself sloshed, stumbles home, walks in the door, and there's a note on the table, and it's from his wife. It says, "I left you." He had a night where he had a failed suicide attempt, tried something else, gets himself just totally blitzed drunk, only to find out that his big plan, whatever it was, gets turned upside down because his wife left him anyway. So like, these aren't funny parts in the book, but they're at the very least entertaining. And that what I just said is maybe the first 50 pages of the book. It goes on. He ends up moving to the town that he wants to. He gets mixed up in a romantic love triangle. It involves his wife that left him and his cousin. The school teacher is involved, and it goes on and on and on. Marriage law is a pretty big theme of the book, and you could tell that was one of the themes that would have been scandalous at the time. And there's a monstrous, heartbreaking episode at the very end of the book, which is just horrifying today, horrifying then. I can't, I'm not going to spoil it, but it does make you sit up. And the other thing I'll say is that Jude and um, other people in the book are moving around town, like from town to town. So there's a lot of traveling and there's a lot of description of the local geographies, um, geological structures, the soil and the landscape and the vegetation. Um, so with a book that's extremely plot driven, um, extremely character driven, has themes, it's very thematic, it's also just richly described and extremely well written. Um, for as bleak and as dark as the book can be, um, it is quite entertaining. It's pretty fast paced, energetic. One of the things that Alan said, which I thought was a really great way of describing this book, for for how serious it can be, how heavy and weighty the subject matter is. Um, the characters are basically never happy. So with all of those kinds of things, Alan said it's still not a gloomy book, which I thought was great. It's a really great way of describing it. So I've read this book before, and it's um, nearly. I mean, it's probably my favorite Thomas Hardy novel. I have a handful that I like, but I really enjoy this book. Um, so that's it. That's what I'll say for Jude the Obscure by Thomas Hardy. Um, yeah. Let me know if you've read it. Leave a comment if you would like. And thank you for watching, and take care. Bye.